Welcome back to Software Without Borders. I'm Andy Hilliard, CEO of Accelerants.
And I'm Olivier Poulard, Managing Director of Software Strategies at Accelerants. Today we have the chance to have Jig Patel with us. Jig is a global technology and business operations executive with over 25 years of experience driving technology-led transformations at Fortune 500 companies. So super happy to have you with us, Jig.
Hello, Andy and Olivier. It's my pleasure to be here with you all. And also my pleasure to be with the audience whenever you all get a chance to see this. And I'm looking forward to participating and providing my feedback and my experiences. And hopefully people will be able to learn from them just as well as I'm able to learn from you all.
I'm absolutely sure they will, Jig. You have a wealth of experience, leadership positions at NiSource, Morningstar, One Inc., Fiserv, Wells Fargo, etc. You and I have known each other for over 10 years now on a working and consulting basis. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this and, participating and providing, any type of learnings I can.
Yeah, well, I was just mentioning before we started the show that of all the podcasts we've been on and the podcasts that I've been on, usually listeners really like to listen and hear the journey story. And I'm gonna extend this a little bit because I'd love to take the journey back. Obviously, keep it concise, but take it back as far as you can. I mean, there are influences in your childhood, I'm sure, that we don't have to start at grad school or whatever like that. But I'd honestly like to hear a little bit about the long form journey, and of course, nothing ever plays out the way you envision it or map it out. I mean, you hit so many forks in the road, and you look back and say, butterfly effect or whatever. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone, right? That's the special part about, these types of stories and learning from where people came from and what you did before, or what shaped you into what you are now, or did you even think of being this when you were a younger person, like myself, right? My family emigrated to the United States in 1976 from India. I was 4 years old. And, with myself, my
Why
mom,
why did they come to the United States?
of course, living the American dream, right? My parents wanted to give myself and my sister an opportunity that they didn't have. And so that's why we came here. But never in my life did I think at that time as a young child that I would be doing what I'm doing today in terms of helping lead organizations for household brands, some of which you mentioned, like IBM, Wells Fargo, and the likes. Typically, right, people want their children to go be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer or something. They never say, oh, I think you should go be a CIO or, chief technology officer somewhere.
Exactly. I mean, did your parents influence you to go into biology and chemistry, or like how did that happen?
They did not actually. They were very cool about it. They said, "Hey, whatever you're interested in, you should do that and be the best you can at that." I particularly loved math and science because I can actually touch it. I can put my hands on it. I can be in a laboratory and mix things together, or I can be solving a problem and I can see it from one side of the equation to the other. I was never a philosophical or theoretical type of person. I liked solving problems and with my own, hands and my mind. And that's why I kind of gravitated towards chemistry and biology as my undergraduate majors. And yes, people typically thought, oh, you're going to go to med school or you're going to go to pharmacy school or something like that, right? And I said, no, I just like math and science. I don't know what I want to do with this later. But that's the beauty of this journey, right? Is I didn't know. And as while I was in college, I was also working full time. This was with Motorola Corporation at the time. And I was doing outside sales, right? I was basically going throughout the Southeast to small and medium businesses to understand what their needs were at that time in, two-way communication, right? In the office or in the field, and both. And so I was learning what those people needed to run their businesses, and I would listen intently. And then I would come back to my office and work with the really smart people, the engineers, and say, hey, this is what the client just told me. And if I listened correctly and took good notes, this is what I think they're asking for. And we would develop a proper solution for them. And that is how I got my start in technology, really through telecommunications. And then as I learned more, and one of my, if you will, superpowers is really being able to listen to the constituents or the customers and really understanding what they need and what they're asking for, and then translating that into technology speak. And that is really what brought me, or at least started my journey in technology and business operations. Because
Sure.
as I graduated and as I matriculated into graduate school while working, I transitioned to a global insurance company called Unum Corporation in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Hmm.
And the CIO at the time was my boss. And he hired me because we had a family connection. His daughter and I went to school together. And
Yeah.
that's how I was introduced to him. And he said, hey, my daughter tells me that you've been working, you're graduated, you're in grad school. How would you like to come work for us? We need someone that really understands technology and understands business processes and line of business needs and requirements. And I feel you could help us in that area in our company.
Sure.
And so that's how I started in financial services and in technology and operations at Unum Corporation. I sat with all the functional areas, whether they were corporate functions such as HR, finance, procurement, sales and distribution, or operational functions such as claims, adjustments, payments and processing, etc. And then, of course, bringing all of that information and intel back to our technology organization and making sure that we truly were understanding what our clients, in this case, internal clients, needed to run the business. And that's how I got my start, and the rest is history, right? As they say. And here I am today helping a utility company, one of the larger utility companies in the United States, with more than 25 years of financial services experience in insurance, banking, payments, cards, asset wealth, you name it. Because operationally speaking, in my professional opinion, what we do to run our companies internally, while there are some nuances based on industry, at the core, I'd say 80% are very similar, right? Finance, human capital, procurement, sales and distribution, money movement or treasury and payments management, right? No matter who you are. And so I take all of those learnings and experiences, and now I'm helping, a utility company that is in a different business than I've been in for the last 25 plus years. But at the core of running the enterprise, it's relatively similar, right? The nuances come in the actual product and potentially some of the constituents or consumers.
I think that one thing that is unusual about you, Jig, is that you're a technologist, that's pretty clear, but you started from the business side. And then one very, very important aspect of technology, as far as I'm concerned, which is going to shock everybody, is that the ability to understand requirements. And not too many people can do that. You will excuse my French, but garbage in, garbage out. You have the wrong requirements, you have the wrong, and the wrong interpretation of those requirements, you will have the wrong solution. Whereas you started exactly the other way around. I mean, most engineers will start engineering stuff they really don't understand, quite frankly. Whereas you try to understand the market, you try to understand the business, and the end user, and then coming up with a solution.
Correct. Yeah, I think you're right. My journey is relatively unorthodox. If you look at a pure technologist, I am not that, right? I am more of a business technologist because I have in my career been lucky enough to be in situations where I've ran both the enterprise operational groups as well as the enterprise technology groups. And in several instances, both functions at the same time as both a COO and a CIO or CTO. And to me, that is a unique perspective and unique situation. And I actually, if you look at the industry, we're seeing more of that now where the chief technology officer or the CIO or the head of tech is now being promoted more towards these other business functions in operations or even finance or even HR, where I've seen technology leaders now being asked to come lead the HR function or the CFO or finance function. But it is because they've shown the aptitude and, more importantly, the curiosity to want to learn those functions and then how to adapt and utilize technology to advance those functions for the enterprise.
Yeah, I'm glad you used that word curiosity. That's what makes a good CTO, I think. Too many CTOs are more about the technology for the sake of technology and not necessarily for the sake of the business or the consumer, if you think about it. So my approach is like yours, by the way. I want to understand the requirements. I want to understand the difference we're going to make by selecting certain technologies to solve a problem, essentially, because that's what we're here for, to solve a problem.
Absolutely. And as part of this conversation, you will and our watchers or audience will probably pick up on several themes or thematic situations as part of my background, as part of my experience, and as part of the way I operate and run my organizations. And you're absolutely correct where, especially today, right, in the 21st century, even if, for example, the group I'm with currently is a large utility company, the product is energy, right? Gas and electric. The product is not software or hardware, right? However, we are employing software and hardware in IoT, in AI, in drone technology, AI enabled drones to help our actual product and business in gas and electric. And so I think it is incredibly important, right? Even if you are a traditional engineer or technologist, it's incredibly important to be inquisitive and curious and want to learn about your business, right? And business acumen.
So I imagine everyone is wired slightly different. And when you were talking about your journey obviously is unique to you as it is unique to everyone. Uh, but it's also somewhat similar to everyone too, because they learn what they learn. They don't have real life experience or very little life experience, and then they try to apply what they learned to their first or second experience. But from there, that's what sort of like obviously you're always learning, but that sort of unlocks your DNA. Like what are you individually really good at or have a certain skill for? So, you came out of chemistry and biology, you knew something, you started to apply something, then you got more experience and that opened your eyes and you were learning, and then you found out you were really good at looking at things from the business value perspective, and having a curiosity around the business model, and that's somewhat of a slightly different DNA set that you have. But to your point, everyone sort of has the responsibility also to get some of those skills and to apply those skills too. You can't just be a software engineer or an architect without either exercising those muscles to look at things from a business perspective, because that's important for everyone. Some people are luckily born with more of that, DNA, that skill than others. But do you feel like you know, what role do you currently play that is maybe in somewhat of a short supply or really critical to the well functioning connection of business functions and business results?
You're correct. For me personally, I think the two unique attributes that I possess are definitely different from other people, but they work for me. One of them is the uncanny desire to always ask, well, why? Right? And that goes back to chemistry and biology. Well, why is that happening? Let me get into the lab and understand and find out. Or can it happen or can it be done in a different way? Right? So that's one attribute that I have. The other one is really connecting, right? Connecting with people and, really bringing them along and into the journey, right? And helping them see that they're valued as part of this journey or as part of this evolutionary process. And for me, those are my two, if you will, unique or strongest attributes that have helped me on my journey. Has nothing to do with technical capability, financial acumen, right? It's really the curiosity or inquisitiveness that I mentioned before, to ask why, and it's not why for the sake of why, it's well, why, and why can't we do it differently, right? Or why should we do it differently and not just keep doing it the way we're doing it, right?
So yeah, you have a unique skill set, and you know this, and you leverage it in your skills. Now, what's really interesting, and I want to hear about how you do this, or do it successfully or not. Hopefully, I think successfully, but you often work within sort of relatively highly regulated industries. And when you're building teams and you're building a culture, do you or how do you extend this environment of asking why and curiosity, and I guess maybe some radical candor and team exploration? So how do you, I mean, that's kind of, that must be somewhat difficult in the kind of industries you happen to be working with. I mean, is this a tactic that you deploy?
It is. And fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you want to look at it, I have been in these extremely highly regulated industries throughout my career. And I personally feel like this type of culture and this type of behavior of asking why and challenging ourselves and challenging some of the norms is incredibly crucial and critical. And I will, for a split second here, I will toot the horn of all of the financial services professionals around the world, because for the last 25 years, financial services as an industry has led the way in terms of innovation and creation, and modernization and evolution, right? All of these things. And I think it's because in this industry and in some of these companies, there have been people and leaders that have been very curious and challenging some of the norms of this industry that have existed for over 200 years, right? In the United States, at least in our financial system. And so that is critical. These are global, right? Tier one leaders and tier one organizations that are challenging the norms. And now, for example, I'm here at an industrial, if you will, utility organization that also needs this type of curious challenge, right? Because here's an industry that, yes, they're innovating. They haven't innovated as fast as we have in financial services, but that's due to, certain environmental, right, procedures and policies, and that's okay, right? Not everybody needs to innovate as quickly as we did in FSI, but they do acknowledge the need for innovation and evolution. And so now you're beginning to see it where energy, utility, and other industrial organizations are beginning to employ different technologies, different processes and procedures. They're hiring team members from other industries, thankfully, right? Where you're getting diversity of thought and ideas, and challenges, right? In the right way. And so I think that's very important. And I hope that people watching will understand that it's okay to hire or attract talent that may not come from 25 years of experience in your particular industry, depending on where you are in your evolutionary cycle. And if you actually are desiring true thought diversity, then ask people to come bring their skills and experiences from other places. Not to say that they're a one-for-one applicable match in terms of those skills or experiences, but that they could provide a diverse of a diversity of ideas, right? And a platform to actually express those and apply those in your company.
So another way to say it is it's interesting and maybe opportunistic for people to be looking at highly regulated industries as a career path, not because they're safe and boring, but because they're starved for innovation, and they need people with, to help them continue to break the mold. And like Lee Iacocca used to say, I know I'm dating myself, way back in the 90s or 80s, lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? I mean, it's happening to everywhere, and of course, like you said, the financial services industry. I mean, that was just so ripe for innovation. It's so competitive. There are winners and losers, and you could clearly see the differentiation between those companies that are innovating or creating, and the startups that are entering the marketplace and disrupting the marketplace. I mean, that's even more evident. It's headline news, and that's why a lot of these Fortune 1000 fintech companies were busy acquiring small startups because they wanted that energy, they wanted that juice.
Yeah. And whether you're in finance or healthcare or energy and utilities or manufacturing, I think there's a good balance, right, that you have to find in your organization on how quickly you want to advance or progress. And also, I fully respect organizations that have a cultural identity that says, we really like our 100-year tradition as a 100-year-old company, how we got to where we are today. But we want to enhance our brand and enhance our position with these newer capabilities, right? And truly using both sides of the coin there, where you have a quote, traditional situation and traditional processes or culture that you're mixing in or peppering in new ideas, new products, or new technologies, or new processes that are mixing with the old, and it works for you and it works for your brand, right? Because not every organization can or should maybe apply all new digital, processes and technology, because that's not how the brand was built.
They should, but they should do it at a pace that their target audience, feels is consistent with the brand and what they expect from the brand in terms of continuity and risk mitigation, and especially the highly regulated industries, power and energy and transportation and finance. The people just want it to work, and they aren't early adopters like some of us, and they aren't always cutting edge and technology forward. But so it's just like you say, it's a blend of safety and continuity with advancement over time.
Yep. It's deliberate application, right? You should do it where it's needed, how it's needed, and when it's needed for your organization to help balance and advance it.
Jig, I've got, since we've been talking about innovation, I've got to ask you, AI ML initiatives. Can you share an example of a project where you leverage AI, to innovate, for instance? And then what were the key factors that contributed to the success of the project?
AI is the hottest topic right now in any industry for that matter, right? And so I'll give you two examples. One was at Morningstar, where I was the enterprise chief technology officer at Morningstar. We developed Morningstar Mo, is the avatar's name. And if anybody has a personal Morningstar account, if you go to morningstar.com, Mo is available publicly. And our reasoning for Morningstar Mo was one, we wanted to enhance the efficiency and capabilities of our 14,000 plus team members at Morningstar. Secondly, we wanted to advance the capabilities and efficiencies of all of the wealth and asset and financial practitioners that use our products and the tens of millions of consumers that use our products. And so that was the driver for us. Those were the driver or attributes for us at Morningstar to develop Mo and to develop these AI capabilities. And we started introspectively first. We wanted to develop our AI capabilities basically, if you will, drink our own Kool-Aid first before we distributed it out to the practitioners and to consumers. And so our strategy was to have the AI in specific roles and functions within the enterprise, and we hardened our capabilities from a safety and security perspective to ensure that this intelligent being can operate correctly and that it enhances the capabilities of our team members and makes them stronger to help our customers. And once we perfected that, we then took the product and, if you will, consumerized it for our practitioners and for our individual consumers like you and I. And now all three cohort groups have access to it and are using it. One of the only financial services true artificial intelligence programs that's out there. And we are now going to be connecting it to other AI programs who we're partnered with, such as our custodial banks. They also have their own AI programs. And so we are going to be testing out the capabilities of those AIs interacting with each other and being able to give our practitioners and consumers even better intelligence and data to make better financial decisions. So that's one story. My teams and I, while I was there, we accomplished that goal in 2022 and 2023. It's publicly available now, and the teams are continuing to enhance the capabilities of Mo, and it's evident as any of us go out and log into the site and interact with it. And so we learned a lot of things during that process, right? We were very thoughtful and deliberate about what we wanted to do, why we wanted to do it, where we wanted to do it, and when we wanted to do it. And so we planned all of these things out first. Before we even touched any type of technology or wrote any type of software, we really wanted to document down exactly why we wanted to do these things and for what reasons. Ethically, of course, too, we took into consideration, we actually formed a ethical AI committee at Morningstar even before having any product, right? That was one of our tenets, that we wanted to do this in a thoughtful manner. And so we formed that committee first, and that committee is the one that reviewed all of these things and approved and helped us advance forward. We also learned good things. We also learned some bad things by making some mistakes. But again, that's why our thesis was we want to try this on ourselves first before we let it out into the open.
How do you see AI, machine learning impacting the future of the financial services? And do you have any advice on that?
Absolutely. And I'm sure, yourselves and the audience listening, we've probably all heard this before, right? It's going to change financial services. And it will, right? In my opinion, professional opinion, it's going to, one, enhance the capabilities of financial services companies and their team members by making them stronger, faster, more efficient, by making the data more reliable, by making the services more reliable and efficient. And from a consumer's perspective, whether you're a commercial consumer or an individual consumer like us, it's going to provide us the same capabilities in terms of better, more efficient, more safe financial information that we can then make decisions on. So I 100% believe that artificial intelligence capabilities will change financial services industries across the world in terms of enhancing the capabilities of those organizations, and then also, of course, enhancing the capabilities of all the consumers that use their products. And it will be something that's going to make it much, in my opinion, right, safer and more readily available, especially in developing countries, right, that require, they also require financial service capabilities. And the proliferation of AI that can help financial service providers be more efficient will help those providers also provide these services into developing countries where it's critical, or even, the unbanked or, unmonetized all over the world, right?
I'm on quite a few podcasts myself, and I was talking yesterday on one about it's not only AI, it makes things better, faster, cheaper, but it also accelerates the feedback loop and the ability to innovate from that feedback and from the data that's coming in from customer interactions. There's so much potential in being able to iterate much faster and better. With AI's ability to parse and determine best most critical path and prioritization of iterations. And that's something I'm looking forward to. Now I understand that well, on the one hand, I was going to say, their customers ability to uh, absorb or assimilate changes. But if the changes are logical and it's for the benefit of the consumer and what the consumer wants and is willing to do, then that's all good.
In my professional opinion and my personal opinion, the advent and proliferation of artificial intelligence tools is definitely going to change the velocity capability, right? Especially, let's say, for example, Morningstar Mo, right? Experimenting with Mo in a confined and strict environment, the speed at which it could operate changed everything for us, right? And once it began learning properly, the way we needed it to, we were able to give it exposure to other areas and other data. And so again, the velocity changed it, right? And it changed everything for us. And we were able to deploy Mo into a production format in within a year, right? Fully tested, fully vetted, secure within a year. And that's difficult to say in a highly regulated industry, right? And Morningstar is a globally significant financial institution. And so there are not many GSIFs that can say within a year we deployed a fully secure operating AI capability into the hands of millions of consumers. So it's a great story.
The one thing that drives me crazy about this podcast is not only are we constrained with time, but we're also constrained by the fact that we're talking, old school, new school simultaneously, and we're at this evolution point where it's, I want to, I could talk to you for another couple of hours on your experience in AI and ML and also developing countries. That sounds fascinating too, but you were also a contributor to a new ebook we put out, and now this is Andy going old school about the true cost of software development, and talking about the development of teams and culture and how you implement sort of communication and collaboration and coordination of team members. So I'm sort of bouncing from the future into the present, and we're all dealing with this sort of evolution, this simultaneous evolution. But can you share some sort of key takeaways, because the emphasis of the book is about, there are so many value drivers, either positive or negative value drivers, beyond sort of price points and offshore technology, cost advantages that really drive the true value of software development, not just software development, but the value to the corporation ultimately, So can you tell me about that aspect, communication, culture, coordination?
Absolutely. And I will compare it to, right, at the turn of the 19th century, right, the Industrial Revolution came upon us. And here we are in the 21st century, and it's the technological revolution, right, or evolution. Very similar. If you really sit down and document it down, very similar in terms of the cycle. And so for us at this inflection point of history, right, technical revolution, it's very similar in the fact that it comes down to people. It comes down to educating people, skilling them up, right? Most importantly, it's the communication, right? And especially in our context where today, unlike the Industrial Revolution, the technological revolution is global, right? In terms of all the people, you can have people in Russia, in China, in India, in Vietnam, in South Africa, all working for a company in Columbus, Ohio, where I am today, right?
Yeah.
Versus at the start of the Industrial Revolution, that wasn't the case. The company would physically be in one place And then slowly over time, they might have expanded their operations to other places.
Yeah.
But in the technological revolution, it's exploded, and the velocity of change globally is, unsurpassed in any other time in history, right?
Yeah, the
And so
Industrial Revolution was humans deploying semi-autonomous machinery, and now it's humans deploying semi-autonomous or fully autonomous technology.
right. And so it's incredibly important for, as a leader, first and foremost, you need to have very clear, concise, and deliberate communications with all of your team members around the world. And then we really need to take their feedback, right? If you're truly forming a high performing global team, you need to take everybody's feedback. You need to show and lead by example that you're willing to do what it takes. Meaning, I've, throughout my entire career, especially over the last, 15 years, have made a deliberate effort to go around the world to these organizations and delivery centers that I've helped create to help connect. I'm the connective tissue. And then making sure that I get the message across to everyone else that now it's all of our collective jobs to be the connective tissue for our enterprise. No matter if you're sitting in a location outside of the United States or inside of the United States.
If you don't do it, nobody will. And if you don't teach it, nobody will,
Exactly.
Emulate it.
Exactly. And the goal is really not that I need to be the only teacher. My goal has always been I want to help get the message across and evangelize it, right? And be the champion so that now you can be the evangelist and the champion. And then it spreads, right? Like anything else, you want the people to spread the word. And that's how I've done it. So far, it's worked relatively successfully, I think. And as I continue to learn and progress in my career endeavors, I'm going to use that same playbook, right? I think it's even more important today than it was even, let's say, 15 years ago, because things are changing so fast.
And it's even more important when you have significant language differences and cultural differences, right? So that alignment is key, right?
Absolutely. A leader, no matter what you are, whether you're a CXO, a vice president, director, manager, right, or even a team leader for that matter, right? Any leader or even individual in the company, you have to actively participate and actively reach out and to learn about the cultural variances and uniqueness of the team members in your organization, right? Because, and it may not even be in terms of social culture, right? There might be geopolitical risks or issues based on whatever country those individuals live in or that office is in for my company. And I need to be aware of that. I need to be on top of that. I need to make sure that I'm properly communicating with those team members in that geography to help them understand what we're doing as a company to help them continue their role in their jobs. And it has to be active. It cannot be passive. And if that's your style, then my guidance is going to be that you're most likely not going to be making the impact that you think you want to make by being passive.
In fact, to say it in a different way, as a leader, you've got to go to the people. As a manager, that's the exact opposite. People will go to a manager, but as a leader, you have to go to the people.
Right, absolutely. And you can tell I get very excited about this topic
Oh yeah,
because I'm much more animated. This is
that's great. Yeah,
it's the crux of what a leader should be doing, right? She or he should be excited about and energized about their people, because without them,
and help them grow.
Absolutely, my job is not for
It's
me.
not just
My job
about
is to
you.
help them, right?
Yeah.
That's right. That's why I said you need to go to the people. You need to help them grow. It's not to hold hands. That's not the point. But
Correct.
you've got to enable your people. Managers typically are more of a constraint than enablement. So whereas leaders, as leaders, we need to enable people. We need to enable people one way or the other.
It's about empowering your team members
Empowering.
and making sure that they understand at least my My personal and professional thesis is, I want to give them as much slack as they need to learn. And learning means making mistakes, but
Yeah,
make the
Absolutely.
mistakes to learn, not just to repeat the same mistakes.
That's
for
right.
And
sure.
so fail fast, fail forward. I'm going to give you as much empowerment as you want to seek and desire, but I'm also going to expect and hold you accountable to learning, and learning by success and also learning by mistakes. And so for me, that's the way I operate. It works really well because the team members feel like they have a voice, like they have a purpose, and that they can be curious and they can be inquisitive and they can ask why. Versus if you restrict that, and here I am in a very highly regulated industry, and if you restrict that curiosity and inquisitiveness, then you're not going to get people that are really challenging and questioning and providing you new ways and new ideas of doing things. They're going to just follow your orders. And in some cases, that may be needed. But in 8 out of 10 cases, you want the other. You want to empower them. You want to give them the flexibility to learn by success and the flexibility to learn by failure, right? And I think that's what's going to make the people better. They're going to grow. And that's also what's going to make you as a leader better and grow.
So that's a very noble pursuit that you're stating, and Olivier, you fully support that. But given the fact that you are often in highly regulated industries, what are some other constraints other than managers, maybe stakeholders, or what are other constraints, challenges? Maybe you can share an anecdote or two, and maybe a tip or two on how to navigate the larger environment, be both motivating and empowering, and creating this environment of accountability, and what could, as a noble pursuit, but what could sort of undermine that, and how do you kind of deal with that?
Absolutely. And you bring up a good point, right? In regulated industries, many times, whether in the United States, Canada, Mexico, other countries, right, they all have their version of federal regulations, right? Or some type of regulatory body that puts out a document that says these are the rules and regulations that you must follow. And that's okay. We need some of that, right? We need those structures. My job is to really, in my organizations, the audit, compliance, risk, and regulatory organizations, I want to work hand in hand with them. I want to really thoroughly understand what these regulations are. And then I want to say, well, can we execute those in a more creative, a more efficient, a way in which we can get the results that they're seeking and ensure the safety, security, fidelity of data, of information, and proprietary information and data. But we may just get to that result in a different manner, a manner which is more conducive to running our operation and more efficient in running our operation. So I don't want to subvert or circumvent what the regulators may be asking for. I want to really sit down and partner with them, and I want to begin to understand, with them, right? Bringing them along with the journey. Here's why I'm asking this, because I still think we can get to the same answer just in a different way, right? You can solve math problems in many different ways and still get the same answer sometimes. And so that's my philosophy, and the way I've operated is because I want to bring them along. Not to say that I don't want to follow the regulations. I just want to understand, can we do that in a different way that's more beneficial, that provides more value for our company and for our customers?
You bring up a good analogy there, because I was always I was always first in my class in math up to a certain point when you had to follow the formulas and the rules, and the teacher was like, Andy, you get to the right answer, but you never get to the right answer the way I'm teaching it. I'm like, I'm just wired differently, man. I think there's a shortcut, like I just the way my brain works. And I got up to a certain level of calculus, which is like that didn't work any further.
There are some instances where there is a prescribed formula for a reason, and that's okay, right? But you want to push up against that. You want to get to that point, right? And exhaust all your other creative options. And so in regulated situations, or even, situations where you just have strict constructs of how you operate, you want to make sure that the constructs are set up in a way and that the people or teams that are setting those up, you're working with them very closely and effectively to say, all right, I understand these constructs, right? This is where, Olivier and Andy, where a lot of pure technologists might get stuck, right? Because they're look at themselves as on one side of the equation and the teams setting up the constructs or regulations on the other side of the equation. And this is where you really have to want to go and learn about what those are and why they exist. And then it's my job as a chief technologist to go bring different ideas, right? And to go ask those other people what these ideas could be and can they still solve their problems, right? I've done this multiple times in the financial institutions I've worked with. I'm doing that here right now at the energy firm that I'm with, where we're challenging some of the norms. But it's because we're sitting with these team members and making sure we thoroughly understand what's being asked for. And then we're coming up with a unique or new creative way to do it, right? I'll give you an example. We're employing AI-enabled drones to manage and monitor utility lines and the vegetation that grows up around these utility lines. Instead of having to use human power to go monitor and do that, the drones can do that much faster, much more efficiently. They can send the data back, and now our field teams are much more effective. They can go to the precise location, and it's actually sequenced out by the software, the AI software, to say, you got to go to this one first, this one second, third, and fourth. And there's so much more. We've become 28% more effective in dealing with this than we were several years ago. Right?
Wow.
And it's not just an effectiveness issue, it's also a safety issue.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if you think about, especially utilities, high voltage power lines, that kind of stuff. I'm a pilot, and I hear on the radio all the time those pilots that go along those power lines just to check everything is good.
Yeah.
They fly very low, very close
Yeah.
to those power lines. They are in my way, by the way, or I'm in their way, on land, especially on landing, because we're all so close to the ground at the airport.
Exactly.
I'm not kidding, Andy. This is just insane to know this. So I think the drones, okay, they're going to take those jobs away, but in the end, it's probably going to be a lot safer for everybody.
Look, I live in Northern California in Sonoma, Santa Rosa, and we've been evacuated 3 times in the last 10 years, and it's a constant threat. And over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of helicopters and various other manned contraptions that are trying to do this. But just the thought of what you're talking about, Jig, it is for the public safety, and it is an issue that is affecting hundreds of thousands or millions of people and large amounts of assets and value.
It's a perfect example, and that's a non-business example. It's a public safety, general human example where we could potentially utilize, technology or AI software-enabled drones that can fly on a 24/7 basis over these areas that are highly, if you will, unpopulated by humans, right? But to ensure that whatever is going on there, they can send back the information so that the forest fire services can proactively go right faster to those locations and potentially prevent it from happening, or if it does happen, they can react quicker. And it's not really about taking jobs away from the helicopter pilots or technicians that fly across those regions. It's enhancing their capabilities. You can still have those people do that, but now there's an army of drones that can also do it. And when those pilots might need to sleep at night, which they do, the drones can still be out there, the second shift, if you will, right? So it's public safety and has nothing to do with business.
Absolutely. Yeah. The why is different. Why are we doing this? Well, to check the power lines. No, 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 not really. Why are we doing this? For safety
That's
reasons.
correct.
Well,
The
not just
Absolutely.
real answer
safety.
to why is safety, not to check the power lines.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
this is a
safety,
perfect
cost,
example.
risk,
Yeah.
insurance. It's just like in
It,
California, the cost of power is going way up. The cost of insurance is going way up. The cost to rebuild. When things.
exactly. So these are the up and downstream supply chain, if you will, impacts, right? Right. If I have an issue on one of my power lines, right, and it causes a problem, now it's a problem for the homeowner or the business owner, the insurance company, the builder, whomever, right? So there are downstream and potentially upstream, impacts to this if we don't do it correctly and we don't use the tools that we now have created effectively, right? This technology can help us, right? And it can help us in many different ways. It doesn't always need to be in terms of dollars and cents and efficiency in capex versus opex. These are very basic applications that can have huge impacts, right? Across multiple industries, right? If we can do that effectively, the insurance industry can benefit, the construction industry can benefit, homeowners can benefit. So, we could talk about these topics for many days, if you will. And you can tell I get excited about it because there are applications. Obviously, again, it's about balance, right? How quickly do you do this? Does it make sense to do it? Because again, there is investment needed to make these things happen. And right now, right, because it's newer, that investment isn't cheap, but it can be done.
I'm really fascinated how you manage upwards to the stakeholders and the people that are investing in you, and how you set expectations, keep people informed, keep them moving along your consultative methodology and your pathway. And I know we've sort of brushed upon it a little bit, but when you go in an organization like this and you're dealing with upstream and downstream constituents. Yeah, between strategy setting and definition and then execution, but just flipping us to the stakeholder side of things. What's important to how do you communicate and set expectations with this audience?
Yeah, it's very similar as I would with the general population team members if I was going on a town hall roadshow, right? Communicating with my ELT constituents or peers, as well as the board of directors, right, is as important, if not more important in some cases, than the rest of our general population team members.
Because without their support, you can't execute.
Absolutely. And my approach has been almost identical, right? In terms of being deliberate, active, right? Not passive communication, but having a communication and change management plan, even for my ELT and board of directors members, making sure that I'm having time with them as a group and individually to make sure I have the precise feedback and information from them. So then I can go back and make sure I have the precise information or change of plans that I need to make to go back to them with the results, right? So it really is another thematic situation here where I'm incredibly deliberate about communicating to them what I say, when I say it, how I say it, with the correct knowledge and information, right? Doing my homework before I get there. But more importantly, and this has to do more with ELT peers, right? How can I influence them to help them be advocates for what I think we might need to do, right? And that, yeah, that really comes with I'm making an effort to learn about your particular function, your particular challenges, so that when I have that level of detailed information, I can go back to the proper experts, whether they're in our company or if I need to go to experts like yourselves outside of our company and help make the proper decisions. It's my job to bring options, right, for these ELT members. And that's really the key. As a CIO or CTO, one of the critical components of our job is to provide optionality, right? That's what we're supposed to do. But that can't happen if we're not doing our due diligence and our thorough investigation and prosecution of the problem so that I can go back and create 2 or 3 different solution options, right? And that's where bringing that ELT or board member along, right? Let's say the board risk committee. Hey, there are particular items that you have said are higher priority and value than others from an enterprise risk perspective. I need to thoroughly understand what those are. And then I need to go investigate in my company where they are. And then I need to bring options back to the board of directors and say, we have a variety of ways in which we can solve these. And here's what they are. And here's the impacts to us, whether it's financially, from a brand perspective, right, etc. Safety and security perspective.
I'm sure, like you've learned this through failure, like we all have, right? What didn't you do right? Where did you lose the faith, the trust, and the excitement of your sponsors? And what could you have done better? And a lot of our audience here are CIOs, CTOs, and even consultants like you. And unless you maintain the faith and trust and excitement of your sponsors, you lose everything. I mean, eventually it's you can't execute because they won't support you.
You can't execute, they won't support you, and most likely they're going to recommend removing you in some cases.
Yeah, replacing
right?
you because they're very
and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. But that's where I'm very critical about this because you're right. I did learn on the job the hard way where I didn't ask these questions. And that's okay, right? As you're starting off and growing and accelerating in your career or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, right? Sometimes you lose sight of that because you're just you're trying to, if you will, acquire market, right? Market share. And I learned that way, but it's what I said before, right? Making mistakes just for the sake of making mistakes is unacceptable, right? You cannot continue to repeat the same pattern. You have to change your pattern, evolve the pattern, and progress the pattern. And luckily, I was taught by some really great people, and I learned, and now hopefully I'm teaching really great people, and they're learning and growing as well. But that's the key. That's my methodology. It works for me. I really hope it works for others that are listening to this presentation because it comes down to very basic things. Innovation is as simple as listening, right? Innovation is as simple as taking a 50-step process and making it 10 or 15 steps. That's innovation. That's progress. That has nothing to do with creating a new piece of software or a new product. But that is still innovation. And in many cases, those small, basic, foundational innovations are incredibly impactful and they add up to big ones.
Jig, it was great to have you. I had a ton of questions that I didn't get to, and I'm sure Olivier did too. We could talk forever on this, but I wanted to thank you for joining us today. Your insights on digital transformation, AI and ML, execution, leadership, and offshore collaboration were extremely valuable. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Software Without Borders. If you're interested in learning more about technology, leadership, digital transformation, or the latest trends in AI and ML, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating if you think we earn it. And I just wanted to thank both Olivier and Jig for being here with me.
Thank you. Looking forward to coming back and, talking some more.